So the next thing is the attack matrix. I imagine everybody's heard of this, and I know at least one student's actually certified in it, which sounds great. I'm not certified in it. I didn't know you could be. Maybe I should get certified in it. But anyway, this thing is not a hands-on product that you use to protect a network directly. This is taxonomy. This is the first step in science, biology and everything else. First, you just take all the information and you sort it into categories. So this is an attempt to make a scientific analysis of all the things that happen when people have attacks. And it goes through a lot of versions. This is now the 9th version. So they start with reconnaissance, then they develop resources to attack you, like buying some cloud servers or something. Then they find some kind of initial access where they can get some ability to do something, to get some foothold on your network. And then they try to do execution, where now they gain command execution. Now they can have some degree of control over some asset, typically an endpoint device. Then they find some way to persist on that device so that even after a reboot, they will still retain control. So they put on something like a rootkit that will, and then they have privilege escalation, where you move from a limited user on the endpoint to the administrator of the endpoint. And then you try to avoid defenses like antivirus and what other network intrusion detection systems and whatever you got. Then you try to steal credentials wherever you can find them. Like on the endpoint device, there are cached password hashes in Windows networks. And then you perform discovery to find things like files and directories, file shares, servers, various things that are visible from your position inside the network that you might want to attack. Then you do lateral movement, move over and take over more and more servers wandering through the network. You collect your data. Not everybody does all these things, but these are the general phases. Then you collect whatever data you came to steal or whatever you can find. You have a command and control server controlling the activities of your agents inside the network. And then you exfiltrate the data, which is quite difficult. Now, in that Splunk stuff you were doing, I mentioned right at the start that there were some packets that went backwards through the network. The web server is allowed to just connect directly to the internet, and that is dangerous and unsanitary. You should not allow that. You should only have one path out that is controlled, and if your other servers want to get to the internet, they shouldn't be going straight to the internet. They should be going hop through your defenses and such. And exfiltrating data from a server of high value, like a database server, is usually not easy because the database server is not allowed to just directly connect out to a malicious command and control server. And then you have your impact, whatever your goal is. Taking down, defacing a web page, encrypting data to try demand ransom, just wiping everything, whatever your goal is. So, and then those are the tactics. Let me make sure. So the tactics are here. Those are the main tactics, the main 14 tactics in the latest version, and each tactic has many techniques. So, and there's a matrix not just for enterprise, but there's one for like mobile and other choices. But I'm only worried about the enterprise matrix. So, and all these techniques, that's why I looked at this and I decided I didn't care for a few years because it just looked like far too much data. But then my students who are getting jobs in industry said, they get jobs in compliance and they have to learn charts of this size all the time and you shouldn't give up. And so I looked at it and I realized they should really know what all these things are. This is a pretty good list of all the terms that should not be new to you. So what I've got here is a few projects where you can just practice using those terms and using this attack matrix and searching things up to make sure that you know these things. So here's one where this does just the tactics themselves. So there are 14 tactics, and I asked techniques, which tactic does this? And you have to guess. If you get it wrong, it'll tell you the right answer. And you have to get 5 in a row to see the flag. So this is, all right. Anyway, this is a way to get some practice learning all the tactics, and then there's a whole series of them for the first few techniques, and then the first few tactics, and next, and next, and next, where you practice all of them. And then there's the groups. There are a lot of attack groups, and you can answer questions about the groups here. And if you go here, you'll see the attack groups listed here. Like the one that's been in the news a lot has been, I think, APT 29. Isn't that Cozy Bear? It's either 29 or 19. Yep, this is it, Cozy Bear. They're all in the news again. Because they hacked everybody with SolarWinds, and Biden went and told Putin, you better knock it off. And just yesterday, the news came out that they're still hacking everybody like crazy, brazenly, openly. Putin apparently doesn't care at all about Biden's threat and is just continuing to hack everybody in sight. But you can see what they tell you, what techniques they use, and the idea is you can perform attribution and try to figure out who's attacking you by seeing the techniques they use, and of course, more precisely, by seeing the details of the malware they use, which you can recognize code in. Anyway, there's the groups, and the last bit is the Navigator, which is the closest to like a hands-on device to use. So I wrote a little walkthrough here for it, because they had some instructions, but the instructions are badly out of date. And so I made a new version of the instructions. So here, this is how you can compare attack groups with a dynamic tool. So I'm going to put this in another window. All right, so here's what you do. This thing is basically like Excel, but it's got all the attack data built into it. So you create a new layer. The problem is, of course, this thing has been through so many versions that you have to specify what version you're using. So I'm going to use the latest version, Att&Ck version 9, and the enterprise version. So now I create a layer, and now this thing has way too many buttons, but the same thing I learned originally remains true. There are only two buttons that matter, the third from the left and the third from the right. They're the only buttons I ever use. The third from the left is where you choose what you're trying to investigate. So if I wanted to investigate APT 29, I click this, and then I can go down here, and I can find threat groups, software, or mitigations. But I want a threat group, so I hunt through here until I find APT 29 and select it. And now it highlights all the things that APT 29 does, all these techniques. And now I can colorize them here with this third button. I can give it a score. So I give the first one a score of 1, and it colorizes them all to make them all red. And now I can compare it to another group. So I can label this just the way you would label an Excel spreadsheet tab. This is APT 29. And if I wanted to compare them to another group, I'd create another new empty layer, V9 Enterprise, create, and now find another group to compare them to, like say APT, I don't know, what does 12 do? Okay, 12, I see at least it has a few good points. All right, so let's compare them to APT 12. And then I'm going to colorize APT 12 and call that a score of 2. All right, and so now I can make a sheet that compares these two. So this is APT 12. Now you add a new sheet and you create a layer from other layers. So if I choose the domain and version, Enterprise Att&Ck v9, and now I can put in a score. See, this is A and this is B. You look at the yellow labels. So I want to calculate A plus B. And that's it. I create that layer. And now I have everything. This one has a score of 1 because only APT 29 does it. This one has a score of 3 because they both do it. 1 plus 2. And if there's something that 12 does that 29 doesn't, it would have a different color, I think yellow. And if I can, I'll probably have to resize the font or something, but I don't see one like that. But anyway, that's how you can compare two layers. And so there's a series of questions to answer, which you have to use this tool to answer here. Like this one, what techniques are used by both Equation and APT1? The Equation group is, of course, us, the NSA. But we can find out what they do and what APT1 does, and you'll find that one of these is the right answer, and on you go. So there's some stuff there to do. Just practicing using the attack framework. Again, there's nothing to install. Now, most of you now have your cloud servers, and here's a couple of flags you can put up to show that you got your cloud servers running, there's just a way to get a Windows flag and a Linux flag just to show you got your machines running. And so I'll let a little time go by for people to work on Att&Ck if you like, and then I'll start talking about defending Windows, beginning with Velociraptor, which is wonderful. Velociraptor is fun like Splunk. And so I remind you, do not have to go on my timetable. If you want to just keep working with Splunk, that's fine. If you want to skip something altogether and jump to something else, that's fine. But I will demonstrate them following the order on the page, that's all. But you feel free to jump ahead if you want to do a more advanced thing, and we will help you with anything at any time. And if you want to spend a lot of your time just learning Splunk, that would be time well spent. Splunk is great. Of course, the Att&Ck framework is great too. So anyway, all right, I'll post this video.